In this video, we'll see how to create a ceiling using both the automatic and sketch options. And we'll see how to edit ceiling boundaries to create an inset ceiling. I have the exercise file Create Ceilings open. And we're looking at the floor 4 plan view, and we'll create the ceilings at this end of the building around the conference room, lounge, offices and reception space. We're currently looking at a floor plan view, and from the Properties palette in the Extents panel here, I'll click on the Edit button next to View Range, and we can see that we have a 4-foot cut plane, which means that this view is created 4 feet above the level and is looking downwards. And therefore, if we create a ceiling in this floor plan view, it's unlikely that we'll be able to see those ceilings, as they will be above the 4-foot cut plane for this view. So I'll click Cancel to close the view range. So when creating ceilings, it's best to be working in a ceiling plan view. So from the project browser, we'll open up the floor 4 ceiling plan view. And now we'll look at the view range settings of this view. And we can see that we have a 7'6" cut plane. And as it's a reflected view, we'll be looking up from this height, and therefore the ceilings will be visible within these views. So I'll click Cancel to close this. And now to create the ceiling, we'll go to the Architecture ribbon tab, and from the Build panel, we'll choose the Ceiling tool. Looking at the type selector, we can see we have the 2x2 acoustic ceiling tile system set. And looking at the Modify Place Ceiling ribbon, we can see we have an option for automatic or sketch ceiling. It's currently set to automatic, so as I move my cursor over the rooms, we can see it detecting the enclosed spaces and outlining those with a red boundary. So in the lounge area here, if I just click, it will place the ceiling in that area. And we can continue to click in the conference room and the office to place the ceilings there. For the storeroom, we'll first change the ceiling type to be the gyprock wallboard on metal stud. And then when we click in this room, it actually places the ceiling, but we can't easily see it as the boundary lines are coincident with the walls and it doesn't have a surface hatch pattern. So although it looks like it may not be placed, if we click to place it again, we can see we get a warning telling us that there are identical ceilings in the same place. So I'll close this warning, and then from the quick access bar we'll choose Undo to clear that last ceiling out. Now for the reception area, as there isn't a physical boundary to enclose it, the area that it finds covers the corridor and a lot more besides. So in this instance, we'll use the Sketch Ceiling option from the Modify Place Ceiling ribbon here. And now we can see that we're in the Create Ceiling Boundary tools, and we have our sketching tools here. So I'll change this to be the Pick Walls tool, and now this will allow me to go around and click on the walls, and it will then trace the boundary line along the edges of those walls. So once we've got all of those picked, we will need to tidy them up a little bit to create an enclosed boundary themselves. So when we pick on the wall, it just traces the entire length of the wall here. So I'll click Modify first. Now looking at the vertical line on the left here, we can see it's on the wrong side of the wall. So we can use the controls here to flip it to the other side of the wall. Now from the Modify ribbon, I'll choose the Trim Extend to Corner tool, and we can start to click on these lines here to create corners to create the enclosed space that we need. Now for the line around the back of the store, we need to trim this out, and as it's one long line, first I'll go to the Split Element tool and split this into 2 separate lines. And now we can go back to the Trim Extend to Corner tool and then create this boundary so that it goes around the storeroom. So having got that enclosed boundary, if we click Finish Edit mode, we should get that ceiling created, and we can see it there created. Looking at the type selector, we can see it's the GWB on metal stud, so we'll change this for the 2x4 acoustic tile system, and then we can see that created in the reception area. Now looking at the lounge area above, we can see the ceiling goes through the sort of store cupboards at the end here, and ideally we'd like that to stop. So even though it was created with the automatic option, we can still select on one of the grid lines here, and then from the Modify Ceilings ribbon choose Edit Boundary. And then we'll get all of the sketch tools so we can modify those boundaries. So once again, I'll just click on the Pick Walls tool and then click the wall at the end where we want the ceiling to stop. And now we'll use the trim extend to corner to tidy up the lines here. And now finally we can just pick on these lines and press delete, so that we're just left with the boundary around the area that we want. And then we can click on finish edit mode to get our finished ceiling. Now, looking at the reception area, we'd like to create a circular inset ceiling in here. So once again, we'll select one of the grid lines, and then from the modify ceilings, we'll choose edit boundary. Now we'll change our draw tools to be a circle. And now coming around to this reception area here, we'll click for the center, and then we'll set the radius of this circle to be 4 foot 6 inches. And as this is an enclosed space within the outer boundary, when we click finish edit mode, we'll have a hole in our ceiling into which we can create our inset ceiling. So now we can see the hole there. So we'll go back to the architecture ribbon tab, and from the build panel we'll choose the ceiling tool again. We'll swap to the sketch ceiling from the modify place ceiling ribbon. And we can see we have the GWB on metal stud type, which is the one we want. So as we already have the lines there in the first ceiling, I'll just change the draw tool to pick lines. And then we can click the edges of the circle there, and then click finish edit mode to create that ceiling. So now whilst it's still selected, looking at its properties, we can see we have a height offset from level of 8 feet. And we'd like to move these ceilings up and down a little bit, but that's going to be easier to do in a section view. So from the project browser, we'll go and open up section 1. And now zooming into the area on the full floor, we can see the ceilings here, and this is the ceiling that we can see in the lounge and the inset ceiling for the reception. If I pick the lounge ceiling, looking at the properties here, we can see that's got a height offset from level of 8 feet. And we can also see that on the temporary dimension here, which I can just click, and then we can change that to 9 feet, and we can see that ceiling move up. And also in the properties palette here, the height offset from level is now 9 feet. Now I'll select the inset ceiling that we created, and we can see that's also got an 8 foot height offset from level. But we want to just move this up by 9 inches. So this time with it selected, I'll click on the move tool from the modify ribbon. And then we can click on our base point and then move it vertically up, and I'll type in 9 inches so that we have it at the right height. And then we can see we have the height offset from level to be 8 foot 9 inches as we want. So that finishes creating those ceilings. Let's have a look at those in 3D. So from the quick access toolbar, we'll open up the default 3D view. And now we can obviously see the whole building here. So to make this a little bit easier, we'll go over to view cube, and then we'll right click with the mouse. And then from the orient to view menu, we'll choose the section option and then section 1. Then the 3D view will spin round, and it will create a section box that aligns up with the section 1 2D view that we were just looking at. So again, zooming in here, we can see where the ceilings are. I'll select the inset ceiling, and then we'll just orbit round using the shift button on the keyboard and the right mouse button. And now we can see that we have the ceilings created in the 3D view. And now that finishes creating the ceilings.